Welcome everyone to the midweek Moisky News for October the 21st, 2020. Before we even start, there's a PMQ stream on this channel tonight, 9:30pm GMT. And a second thing, I'm very sorry for not being as active with regards to uploading content. I am trying to correct that with more interesting subjects. Like today, critical race theory cropped up. And since the subject was trending, I thought, oh whoa, let's have a little discussion about that. For those who don't know, critical race theory, or CRT, is a theoretical framework in the social sciences that examines society and culture. It has 5 tenets: counter-storytelling, the permanence of racism, whiteness as property, interest, conversion, and the critique of liberalism. It has been introduced as a number of policies by the Labour Party to try and get it more into education, and it has crept its way in over the last decade. So the Conservative Party can take quite a bit of blame for this one because they haven't tackled it, up until recently when the Equalities Minister spoke up. But before we get into that part, what they said triggered Dawn Porter with this response. Yeah, and David Lammy has even called that particular Conservative a racist. The MP in question is called Kemi Badenoch, and she, well, by their own definitions, I'm assuming there's a term for this. Kemi Badenoch became an MP in 2017. Originally, she was Under-Secretary of State for Children and Families, then the Under-Secretary of State for Equalities. She is also the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. She's been a busy lady and has been doing quite a lot when it comes to equalities. More notably when she said this.
What we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted facts. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life, and it is the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear, this government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter group, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to be politically impartial. Black lives do matter, of course they do, but we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. I know this because at the height of the protest, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling, and I'm afraid I apologize for saying this word, calling a black armed police officer guarding Downing Street a pet nigger. That is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the House. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn many of the actions that we see this political movement instead of pretending that it is a completely wholesome anti-racist organization. There is a lot of pernicious stuff that is being pushed, and we stand against that. We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views, is breaking the law.
This is why critical race theory was trending. Of course, it is helped by the fact that Lammy called Kemi a racist. Now, there is a point to be made when it comes to the subject of, is black history British history? The answer is, by the way, it's all just history, and it should be taught fairly, but Kemi is right. The majority of the history taught in schools should not be catered towards making white children feel guilty for some of the history that has been perpetuated against others of different races. It should, of course, be mentioned, but if we're going to be fair and balanced about it, perhaps we should go to other nations and talk about the racism in those respective countries towards other people of differing races. It would be quite a messy education, I might add, but it would be a very balanced and fair education. Kemi has indicated that to teach the social sciences in this particular manner, critical race theory, to children, and only provide one side of events, like defunding the police, would in fact be illegal, and she is actually correct. You are supposed to, as an educator, provide all sides to something. So everyone has context, because as it turns out in education, context does matters. Not so long ago there was a kid, a little white ginger kid, who was trending on Twitter and all over the news because he was very upset being separated from his friends, who were themselves black and minority ethnic. It upset him because, and then they fed him the, well, bullcrap. It shined a light on how education is being dealt with now. The problem also is that in the sciences, which would include mathematics, engineering, they are trying to insert critical race theory into that as well, which is a very peculiar thing to do. For me, if you're trying to insert race into academia, unless it serves a purpose of discussing differing histories, you'd be hard-pressed to find a reason to do it without using it as a fulcrum to absolutely upset, shame, harm those that are white children because they're white. I will agree that black history is British history if that history happened in Britain. But that isn't what many people are pushing for, is it? Because a lot of the cultural stuff you're referring to is actually history from other countries brought here. That doesn't make it British. It just makes it another aspect of culture as a whole spectrum. And now that I've used the word spectrum, by all means, insert your comments about Labour MPs that push for this using spectrum in the comments down below. You are all correct. So when Dawn Porter asked Kemi Badenoch about decolonising the curriculum, Kemi Badenoch is absolutely correct in saying to do so would be illegal, and that to teach as fact white privilege, which it is at best a theory, a rather flimsy one I might add, is wrong. Stop trying to muck up education for the next generation. You're the same people who, while mostly going to private education or grammar schools, would want to shut them down to then take the ladder out from behind you, so no one else can get to where you are in your little vaunted spots. Same people who also want to harm people, while simultaneously wanting to coddle people. It's a rather peculiar position, but an unsurprising one, since it is incredibly difficult right now to want to support any political party. But I have to give credit where credit is due here. Kemi saying what she said takes some balls.